want to thank you so much for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com's official YouTube channel, and I'm your host, Jacob Tiranno, and today I'm going to be talking about week 21 of my 365-day movie challenge. It's pretty amazing. It's getting really up there. I mean, 21 weeks has just kind of flown by. I'm already on week 22, obviously. Starting today, yesterday, Memorial Day. Sorry for the late upload, but still, you know, it was Memorial Day, celebrating, and of course, remembering all those who've served this country and have paid the ultimate sacrifice. But moving on, week 21, I decided to watch movies about other movies. So, pretty much consisted of 7 documentaries that focused on other films, or the making of other films, or the legacy of other films. And the first one that I started with was really interesting, and it was called Best Worst Movie. And this movie follows the fandom and fame that Troll 2 is captured. If you remember last week, if you've not seen that video, make sure to click that white eye right above my head. I watched Troll 2, which is considered one of the worst movies of all time. And I could easily see why tons of people die to see this movie, because it is so bad, because it is so out there and so strange and intriguing. But I actually think this documentary, Best Worst Movie, which is about the fandom of Troll and them going out and screening it now, 20 some odd years later, I found it to be really captivating and at times touching, because, it's about these people behind this cult film that know that their film was called the worst film of all time. Some of them embrace it, some of them are embarrassed by it, and some of them to this day are really pissed about it. But it's touching in the sense, not because of those who are part of making Troll 2, but because you get to see what film does to people. People are getting Troll 2 tattoos. They're lining up outside for hours, coming from hundreds of miles away to watch a screening with a bunch of people. They want to see the people who made the movie. It shows the lives of people who were affected by a movie and how those people celebrate it. And at the end of the day, I think that's why we all do what we do. That's why I'm a critic, because I love to celebrate good movies. I'm sure filmmakers celebrate movies that they've loved and touched them and wanted them to celebrate. I mean, that's what it's all kind of about. And it may be about one of the worst movies of all time, but it's really about the love for film, and it's quite charming in that sense. It's both funny and at times kind of sad as we kind of catch up with those involved with the film. Some of them, their lives didn't go according to plan, and that's kind of sad. But overall, it has a lot of heart, and I enjoyed this movie. It is probably, I think, easily put, the best documentary about the worst movie of all time. One of the worst movies. Moving on, I quickly hopped into another film from 1993 called It's All True. Now, It's All True is quite a fascinating documentary for any true film lover. Sure, it does get a bit redundant, but overall it is quite satisfying. And this documentary kind of follows the unfinished documentary from the unfinished film from Orson Welles, and it somehow manages to capture the essence of Orson, and obviously long after his passing, but his presence can totally just be felt through that movie. Obviously there's a lot of interviews with him. We're talking about this movie and why it was never finished, but seeing it and then kind of seeing the end where they put together what they have, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, it's a pretty moving experience, and it's visually stunning, I think, like just the way everything was put together, and it's just fascinating. It manages, I think, really to kind of just feels like Orson Welles was attached to this, and I think that really makes it definitely worth a watch. A very interesting movie. Let's see here. Moving on, I watched Lost Soul, The Doom Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. Now, after we talked last week, you know that I was actually a big fan of Dr. Island. Oh, I wouldn't say a big fan, but a fan of The Island of Dr. Moreau, the very strange movie starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. And Lost Soul is a wonderful and intriguing documentary about a film that isn't very wonderful. It gives the audiences a lot of answers. Like, if you're someone who's watched The Island of Moreau, and you're like, what happened? This documentary basically goes, well, here's what happened. You know, we really follow Richard Stanley, the film's original writer and director, who was going to take on the project, and his vision, and how the studios and, you know, a bunch of, not just the studios, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, the studios ruined this movie. I mean, by a lot of different variables, that movie became something completely different. And the Island of Dr. Moreau is a scattered movie because it's made by a lot of different people with a lot of scattered visions. It definitely gives you the answers that people have been asking since they first saw the film. It doesn't pull punches as it explores the disaster of that making of the movie. There's no fluff. It's just a really strong look, and it's a must watch of any real fan of that movie, or anyone else who wonders how bad films get made. Like, if you ever watched a movie and just go, who made this movie and why? The answer lies in this movie, because there are too many cooks in the kitchen. Moving on. On day 144, I watched the documentary Full Tilt Boogie, which is an extremely entertaining behind-the-scenes look into the beloved film From Dusk Till Dawn. Full Tilt Boogie goes beyond the normal, behind the scenes interviews, like with main stars and directors. It goes beyond that, which I really appreciate, and I think even though this is an entertaining movie to hear about the production of, the reason why this documentary is special is because we're talking to those that we don't normally talk to. We're talking to those faces who slave on film sets. I mean, for those of you who watch films but don't know very much about films, I mean, there are so many people working on the projects. Grips, electricians. I mean, the list is endless of how many people are just there endlessly working and slaving every single day. And they don't get to voice and get interviewed very often. But Full Tilt Boogie really kind of made it apparent to kind of tribute all those people's name in the credits that you don't recognize or leave before reading. And it's a very fun documentary. Obviously, seeing this cast kind of, I mean, there's a lot of fun moments and the partying and ensues and the bumps that come along the road. But it's really interesting because of those characters, I think, in particular. Those people who slave on a movie and their names aren't mentioned very often. Day 145, I watched the 1982 film Burden of Dreams. And Burden of Dreams is a remarkable movie. A tribute to the passion and dedication of the auteur. The film follows Werner Herzog and his making of his film, which right now I can't believe, but I'm spacing. But I loved this movie. I honestly wasn't sure how I was going to react to Burden of Dreams, but seeing this, Fitzcarraldo, the Fitzcarraldo film was the name of the film from Werner Herzog, but it's really a love letter to filmmakers. There's a lot of films that are a love letter to film or talk about the passion of the movie, but this is a movie that really shows how a director or a filmmaker can really dedicate themselves to making a movie. I honestly think it may be my favorite film about filmmaking because of just the portrait of Werner Herzog, a director with a dream. I mean, that's what it's about, burden of a dream, right? It's called Burden of Dreams, but the burden of a director's dream, like everything that he wants to do and everything he's willing to put on the line to share the story that's embedded in his head, I think is a very, very inspiring and beautiful thing. It was just truly moving. Speaking to a lot of filmmakers and watching movies every day in my life, you know that you could take Richard Stanley. That guy had a dream, and he wasn't able to complete his dream in his work because, a lot of variables. But a director, and especially what's really interesting is because no movies will get made like this ever again. Movies aren't made like this anymore. It is a time where directors were able to shoot for a year at a time on location and slave and do what they will. I mean, the closest thing I can think about is The Revenant. But even The Revenant, they're on a time budget, and there's so much work that goes into it. I mean, this story is quite fascinating. These people are putting years of their lives on making one movie, Fitzcarraldo, and they're risking them in the process just to make a movie. And I think it will touch anyone who loves the medium of film, and it just masterfully illustrates the power of the filmmaker. Moving on day 146, I watched the documentary Room 237. Room 237, obviously about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Unfortunately, this 2012 film, wasn't as enjoyable as I imagined when I first heard about it. But there are some interesting parts. I don't want to say I dislike the film, but for the most part, it feels like a lot of the theories and the things that people are talking about are really reaching. Like, it's really out there. Like, according to the IMDb page, Stephen King got up and walked away halfway through because he just felt everyone was reaching too much. And I agree. Like, a lot of it's just like, oh, okay, you got that from that? All right. And I've heard some pretty crazy theories about The Shining. And this movie is just kind of... multiple people, I think up to 9 people, who are talking about their theories of The Shining. And I think that it's a lot of rambling from Kubrick fans and film theorists. And, you know, sometimes it's entertaining, and sometimes it's like, oh, that's an interesting theory. But most of it's just like, I don't know about all that. And you know what? The film really kind of fails, is it fails to distinguish those being interviewed. I couldn't tell apart who was speaking at times. Like, I knew there were different people, but I couldn't tell who was talking about who, or whose theories connected to whose theories, and I quickly lost track of that. And I think that was really, really the major down part of the film for me, is that I just didn't know who was talking. And I think it'll manage to intrigue some Kubrick fans and fans of The Shining. Some of the theories, like I said, are quite fascinating, but overall, the majority of the material doesn't feel strong enough to warrant a feature-length film. And then I closed out the week, day 147, by watching the awesome documentary on my amazing 100th anniversary Universal's 100th anniversary Jaws Blu-ray, which is an amazing movie. I try to watch it every Memorial Day, which I did. What was it saying? Oh, The Shark is Still Working, which was an excellent documentary about a film that I and many others hold close to their heart. It tackles not only the iconic film itself, it tackles the fandom and the legacy that Jaws has created. The Shark is Still Working dives into everything from cast interviews, music, props, the books, and the effect that Jaws had on our oceans. Now, I will say, I think that this movie went very light on talking about the impact, the negative impact of Jaws. Much as I love the movie, hate what it did to our oceans. There was a huge backlash because of Jaws, both the book and the movie, where people wanted to go out and just kill these sharks, kill these monsters, and it really hurt our oceans. Peter Benchley, the man who wrote the book of Jaws, which is also a great book, actually, you know, became an ocean preservationist to help the sharks because he felt so bad of what he kind of created. And I don't think they really go that in depth. However, they do talk about that now. Jaws, the people who worked on Jaws and the fan of Jaws have helped try to fight that and try to keep the sharks preserved, which is good. But I mean, I think, you know, granted they're not making a film to kind of show you the negative of Jaws. They're showing you the legacy, but they did kind of gloss over that. But either way, it is a film pleasing for any Jaws fan or any cinephile, for that fact. But it did lack the burden, like Burden of Dreams had on me. Like, Burden of Dreams truly moved me. It put me in a place where I was like, wow, like I was moved after that movie. I want to own that movie, even though I own The Shark's Still Working, and I probably will own a few of the other ones I mentioned, or if not already own already. But Burden of Dreams, definitely my recommendation if you guys haven't seen that yet. Even if you've not seen the movie Fitzcarraldo, it is still worth a watch. Because it is very, very powerful. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for week 21. Week 22, I know if you were watching me and Jeffrey K. Howard, you could watch those videos what I'm talking about right up here in that white eye. Got into it. Jeff created an ultimatum for me, also known as Vegas Film Critic. He and I went back and forth, and he's going to be doing a Vegas Film Critic week for me. He's going to be setting it up, and I'm going to be watching. It was supposed to be this week, starting yesterday, but unfortunately, we're going to push it back just to make sure we both can agree. Like, he has to make sure that I haven't seen the films with to kind of do some organizing. So I'm just going to be watching some random stuff this week. So there's no theme for week 22, but that doesn't mean it won't be any fun. So make sure to tune in next week. Also, check out my review of X-Men Apocalypse. And other fun videos up here on the white eye. All the fun stuff we do. If you like this video, slap a like on it. Let me know that you've appreciated what I've done here today. Always never miss a video by hitting that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or recommendations for me, let me know down here in the comment sections below. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob Tiranno, and please continue chasing cinema.